All right, looks like the sound is coming in fine, so we're going to go ahead and get started here. All right, thank you for joining. My name is Kevin Gilmore with the National Weather Service New Orleans Baton Rouge office located in Slidell, Louisiana. We're going to do a quick tropical update here to talk about how the tropics have been heating up a little bit. We now have a named system that's come out of the Caribbean that's now impacting portions of Cuba right now. It's weakened a little bit, but this system may actually come into the Gulf, so we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about another system that we're monitoring as well that's further to the east behind that one in the central Atlantic and what we can be expecting from there. And then kind of go over some preparations and maybe a little bit of local weather here, what we can expect here locally along the northern Gulf Coast, at least all the way coming up for the next few days. So we're going to go ahead and jump right into it with the latest on Fred here. Let me go ahead and jump here. This is the latest on Tropical Depression Fred. This is as of the 8 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time or 7 o'clock intermediate advisory, the latest on Fred. The storm is relatively weak now, just north of eastern Cuba, not far from pretty much right around the Bahamas, and it's moving towards the northwest as a depression. We're still expecting some strengthening, some very slow strengthening as the storm basically parallels the Cuban coastline. Then potentially impacting portions of the Florida Keys where they are now under a tropical storm watch, where the storm could regain tropical status as it enters the Gulf. And if it does, it's going to be towards the eastern Gulf areas and then possibly even getting up towards the Florida Panhandle late this weekend into early next week. So this is the current forecast of what we have, and we're going to kind of jump over now and show you what we got with the current satellite imagery. Basically, with the imagery that you see here, this is the Gulf of Mexico in the middle, so Louisiana is going to be on the top part of that, where you see a lot of those colder cloud tops from rain and thunderstorms we had earlier today. But the tropical depression Fred is just about pretty much right over my head there, right over eastern Cuba, where you see that kind of the cluster of cloud cold tops. So we're looking at what's called infrared satellite imagery, which is measuring the temperatures of the clouds. So as thunderstorms grow and the atmosphere gets colder aloft, they billow all the way up to the top of the atmosphere. And when they get to that colder atmosphere, those cloud tops get a lot colder. So that's a good indication to us that there's thunderstorms or deep thunderstorms in a vicinity when you see those brighter reds and even blacks. So what we're seeing here overnight is that there's a lot of convection associated nearby the center of the storm. So we're seeing a little bit of an uptick in activity, which could be an indication that the storm's trying to get its act together. A little bit more details about that. We're going to kind of show you a little bit of a close-up of the system right now. The latest update placed the storm at 21.3 north or 75 west, which is just about where my mouse is blinking right there. So there's a little bit of a skew of the convection off to the east side, which means it's seeing some type of westerly wind shear, which you can kind of see with the cloud tops are kind of skewing off towards the north and west a little bit there. North and east. So not really the best environment. The storm did weaken when it went over Hispaniola, went over some of those taller mountains. When these tropical systems encounter land or terrain, they have a hard time to strengthen. Usually they weaken. So the storm did weaken when it went over Hispaniola, and now it is somewhat over warmer Gulf waters, but it's encountering that dry air to the west and some shear that's blowing from the west towards the east, which is displacing the convection off towards the east side of the circulation. So there's a few obstacles that the system is going through right now, and there will be more obstacles coming up as the system continues off towards the northwest. So we're going to go ahead and jump back here with the latest update we were just talking about, where the storm's going to be going. You see that, of course, the cone gets wider as we get further out due to lower confidence. But for right now, impacts are going to be largely more towards the east of our area. So for those who are asking questions, what's this going to do to Louisiana? What's this going to do to Mississippi? For right now, we're expecting greater impacts towards the east. That includes the Florida Panhandle, and then all the way down the peninsula, down to even the Florida Keys will be seeing some impacts. And if you have family and friends or you have a planned vacation, just be aware there could be a lot of locally heavy rainfall, even some isolated tornadoes on the right side of the storm late this weekend and early next week. Even some gusty winds, especially where the center of the storm makes landfall. And of course, as we always say, we don't want you to focus on that center location where the storm makes landfall. There could be impacts well outside of that, the center of the storm, all the way across Florida. So kind of a rainy situation, kind of rainy and windy next few days coming up this weekend for Florida, and even possibly getting all the way up into Alabama and Georgia, eventually going in towards late Monday and into Tuesday. Excuse me. So here's the tropical storm force wind speed probabilities. This is basically just a cumulative probability of sustained 1 minute average surface wind speeds equal to or exceeding 39 miles per hour, or tropical storm force. So we see that the colors, they do kind of get over towards Mississippi, but those are very low probabilities, and that has a lot to do with the lack in confidence with the system. So there is some chance that the system is a little bit weaker. It could wobble a little bit towards the east, a little bit towards the west, which is why that cone gets a little bit wider there. So the probabilities do exist across portions of coastal Mississippi. The whole story here is that we do not want you to let your guard down. This is something that needs to be watched. Any system like this that enters the Gulf, if any interest along the northern Gulf Coast, needs to kind of keep an eye out for this, especially if you have any plans traveling towards the east, or you have any family, friends, or relatives across Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And just a little bit of a zoom in of what I was talking about with those probabilities, showing you how they get towards coastal Mississippi. But the probabilities are a little bit higher towards just off the western coast of the Florida Peninsula, that going up towards maybe Tampa Bay, and eventually maybe getting up towards Panama City Beach. They may be having more direct impacts there, but impacts could be felt way to the east, including maybe even Miami up to Jacksonville, Florida, as the system continues up towards the north and west. And yes, there is another tropical disturbance that we are monitoring out in the central Atlantic. This is what has been designated as Invest 95L. This is in the central Atlantic. Right now, the National Hurricane Center gives this a 60% chance of formation in the next 2 days to a 70% chance in the next 5 days. So as you can see with that red area, where the system's going to be tracking along is going to be where we're going to be expecting the storm to possibly even develop. As it gets towards the Lesser Antilles, we're not 100% sure if this may go into the Caribbean or stay north of the Lesser and maybe even potentially greater Antilles. But for now, again, just something to watch as we get here for the next few days. A slow and steady development is possible. We will say, though, however, looking at some of the latest guidance, it is encountering a little bit of shear and some dry air. But slow and steady strengthening is looking relatively likely with that high 70% chance in the next 5 days. And should the storm get a name, the name will be Grace. As you see here, here's the list of the 2021 tropical cyclone names. And I want to show you as well, as we get towards kind of getting close to mid-August now, when things are kind of heating up a little bit. Is this a common area where we see development? Yes. As we get towards August, usually we start to see more development out towards the mid-central Atlantic, and then even the Caribbean, where Fred currently is. So this is nothing abnormal. We see tropical cyclones typically peak up this time of year and in these locations. And speaking of that, the current season, hurricane season timeline, as you see, we're going towards the climatological peak. It's coming just around the corner. So this is typical for this time of year to see tropical systems develop, and they're coming off Africa, as they typically do this time of year. Also want to show you there on the bottom right, the latest 2021 Atlantic hurricane season outlook. We're still at around 15 to 21 names, a little bit of a change from the latest update, 7 to 10 hurricanes and 3 to 5 majors. So we are expecting still a relatively active season. So what do you need to do? You need to have a plan. Just in case, you never know, a storm could develop. You could be in the cone just as soon as you even realize it. So have a plan in place. This is your job to do here. We know that we don't have a direct threat to Louisiana. However, we don't want to say there is no threat to Louisiana. But for right now, model guidance is better confined a little bit east of our area, but still bears watching. That means right now you need to have a good plan, especially since we're going towards the mid part of the peak of hurricane season. Just make sure you updated your hurricane supply kit, anything like that. And most importantly, too, make sure none of your food items or batteries, none of those have expired. That usually is a problem when you haven't checked it in a long time, and then you finally get that tropical system and you go, oh, darn, my batteries are dead. I can't use my flashlight. So just kind of make sure that everything's been updated and check over your kit as soon as possible. And then talk a little bit more about us locally. What are we going to be expecting here? Well, summer is what we're going to be expecting here. Every day we just had an enhanced chance of late morning to afternoon pop-up shower and thunderstorms. And today we had a lot of coverage of it. Even a few strong storms that delivered some gusty winds and some torrential local heavy downpours. And that threat could basically continue all the way through the upcoming weekend and the next week. This is your 7-day forecast from New Orleans. And then we're going to show you also Baton Rouge, which is the same story. Hate to say it. If you're tired of this rain and heat, we're in the summer and we're pretty much in the peak of it. So it's not going to look like we're going to see any changes coming around the corner. And there you have it there, the 7-day forecast from Gulfport. Same story, highs in the low to mid 90s. or getting close to the mid 90s, generally near around 90, maybe upper 80s to low 90s, and around a 50 to 60% chance of showers and thunderstorms, primarily in the afternoon hours. So kind of going back and just kind of recapping what we just talked about. Again, something to keep an eye on with Tropical Depression Fred. It could become a tropical storm as it may slowly strengthen as it parallels the Cuban coastline, entering the Gulf this upcoming weekend, and should stay east of our area based out of the latest forecast track. However, we want you to pay close attention if there's going to be any changes. All interested along the northern Gulf Coast should closely monitor the National Hurricane Center for official forecast information, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter, NWS New Orleans, where you'll get the latest forecast as it pertaining to our local area, and we'll be passing along the latest information from the National Hurricane Center as well. So that's all we got. We may do another update maybe tomorrow, not entirely sure, but we appreciate you joining, and take care. Thank you so much.